And then as the fleet ages, you replace it. And as you're replacing them, you put them in areas and on routes where there is the largest amount of pollution of this form, so that you're reducing it in that area. You could do it with government vehicles, state and county and city.
What about propane?
I don't think it works as well as the natural gas.
You just have a distribution system already.
Well, you do, but I don't think one burns as clean. If you're not careful with propane, it'll soot. And you don't get much sooting from your oven or your gas stove. So, there's the question. The answer is, I guess, political will. And I think that.
Couldn't there be other factors like, I don't know anything about natural gas and its tendency to car on fire or something?
Well, you have to understand that it's liquefied. It's liquefied, and there's places that are doing it. There are places that were doing it then. There was only one county in North Carolina, and this study was during the early, about 2001 or 2. And there was one county in North Carolina. There were other school districts around the country who had embraced this. And in fact, if you go to Washington, D.C., and you look at some of the buses, they look kind of peculiar because they have this big long thing on top. You see the bus, and then over about 2/3 to 3/4 of the length of the bus is this thing that's raised like that. That's natural gas. And they are gradually converting their bus system to natural gas. A lot for that reason, because it is very polluted up there as a consequence of the traffic. So there are a number of things to consider. There are solutions to the problem. It isn't as if our hands were tied and we can do nothing. We can be proactive, but you have to educate both the citizenry and the people that make the decisions and control the dollar bills. And I'm all for doing that.
Thank you. All right, we have about 10 minutes for broad conversation. We'll have a little bit of time for a wrap-up from John Stevens, and then everyone is invited to stay and talk individually. So, questions for the panel? Or did you already get them all in during the presentations? Rebecca.
Sort of a comment, but I'd like a response to. It'd be interesting to think about different scenarios, future scenarios that could affect ozone, for example. As I was sitting here, I was thinking about members of the environmental community who I've met who are really pushing to stop North Carolina from purchasing mountaintop removal coal. And if that happens, where does the coal come from, and what are the characteristics of that coal and its impact on ozone? And then I met the guy who's the head of forestry for the North Carolina Bioenergy Center, north of Raleigh. And he and some other forestry folks were talking about some proposals for something like charcoal briquettes that could be made from forest products and burned like coal. That would have to be alterations made. But those kinds of things. What impact would that different chemistry have on ozone levels? If those technologies went forward.
Answer to your first question is to get away from the mountaintop removal, you go with western coal, like the Powder River Basin. Heard of that? That's considered one of the cleaner coals. The western coals are big open pit mines, but it does not involve mountaintop removal, and they're lower in sulfur. A lot of people went to that coal because it was cheaper than putting on scrubbers back when they were trying to reduce sulfur dioxide emissions, but not by 95%, which you're getting with a scrubber, or even more than that with a lot of scrubbers now. So that would be the option. So you have to ship it farther. And of course, the economic impacts in West Virginia and Kentucky and places like that are big. But that would be the way to go. I mean, and there's a lot of coal out there. And that's been discussed a lot, you know, about what you should do. But actually, when people put scrubbers on, they often want to go to higher sulfur coal because the scrubber's taking out enough of it anyhow that they can still meet their limits and it's cheaper. The higher sulfur coal is cheaper than the low sulfur coal.
What do they do with the water?
What do they do with the water?
I'm sorry, what do they do with the acid solution?
With the acid solution, well, there's a variety of things that happen. What they're scrubbing with is, of course, limestone, crushed limestone. So what you're getting out of the scrubber is gypsum, exactly.
Yeah.
You're getting out calcium sulfate. You put in calcium carbonate,
Yeah.
you get out calcium sulfate. And that's a big problem with to do with all. For the big scrubbers, like up in Roxborough, they actually build a drywall plant next to the power plant. All of the sulfate from the calcium sulfate is being taken to Tennessee from the Asheville plant. They haul it to Tennessee.
There's an extensive,
There was a second part to your question. We'll get back to that.
there's an extensive story about the coal in the Wall Street Journal today.
Oh, really?
You might want to take a look at it. It talks about the Powder River Basin, also in the eastern part of the United States, and how extensive the amount, how long that's going to last, et cetera, which is subject to a lot of debate. But it's very interesting.
Yeah, we have a lot of coal, so it's cheaper than other forms of energy, but boy, yeah, we got to stop mountaintop, in my opinion.
You could always load it up and send it out to White Sands, New Mexico. That's gypsum.
Long way to haul it.
Another set of problems.
But her second question,
Charcoal,
yeah,
turning wood into charcoal.
well, there's a lot of effort right now to find alternative fuels in North Carolina. There's a lot of money in the legislature to help do that. But when it comes to burning NOx, which forms ozone, it comes from whatever you burn.
Yep.
Sulfur doesn't. Sulfur is pretty much limited to coal or heavy oil.
Well,
But
you have to produce charcoal by burning wood,
right.
in essence. So it's a matter of, it's really what is the source term? That is, where is the source of the pollution? Is it going to be the plant where you're converting it to charcoal? Or is it going to be a series of individual sources that are the users? I mean, the same thing's true with a refinery. Refineries burn off stuff, and they're polluters. And I imagine as a source, they're big polluters. They make something that's used in smaller polluters, but the smaller polluters proliferate. They're all over the place. So you've got now a distributed source as opposed to a localized source. And oh, by the way, it still gets into the atmosphere and it will visit you. TVA burns coal. Look at your mountains. That's a significant source for you, as well as historically plants in the Midwest, coal-fired plants in the Midwest. It gets transported here. You can't control the wind.